What's up, everybody? Yes, you are in the right place. This is the Arthur Moats YouTube channel. I am Don Farrow, back again with another season of Turf Watch, the place where we're making sure everyone's held accountable for their Steelers takes. We're here today, right before the season's about to kick off. The Steelers taking on the Falcons in Week 1. Should be an interesting matchup, but everything is so unpredictable before the season starts. I'm not the type of guy who will be able to tell you exactly what will happen, but I know someone who will be able to tell you, so that's what we're going to look in today. This episode will be about what is Vegas predicting the Steelers will do this season. Now, we know that Las Vegas, they set all the gambling lines, and they're spot on for a reason. You see the massive casinos, the big sports books, the huge celebrities in their ads. They get to do all this stuff because they're right. They usually have a pretty spot-on idea of where these players are going to rank in as far as passing yards, receiving yards, rushing yards. It even goes as far as predicting awards for the season. MVP, leading rusher, the most improved player, defensive rookie of the year. We're going to look into all of this today and see how the Steelers are being perceived by these guys who usually are pretty good. Now, the first one that I thought was interesting is that George Pickens is going to break out this season. And I guess everyone in the Steelers fan base is hoping that's going to be the case, because there's really not a whole lot of options outside of him. You look on the list of these sports books and where they have the Steelers wide receivers, George Pickens is the only one who's really listed. Occasionally you'll see maybe Roman Wilson getting a few. Pat Freiermuth around 450 yards is his over-under. So no one's really expecting anything remarkable out of the Steelers receiving core outside of George Pickens. Pickens is ranked right up there with some phenomenal wide receivers in this league. We've got a few different sports books that have given a couple different numbers, but it seems like the general consensus here is 925.5 yards. That's the over-under. So they're thinking he's going to land right around that 925 area. Not too much above, not too much below. Of course, things can change. He could have a phenomenal breakout season, have way more than this, and you never have to worry about that. But this is just where they think he's going to be. Some other players he's around, Zay Flowers, a divisional rival there. I think he's a phenomenal receiver. Terry McLaurin, also 925.5. You know, he's got a rookie quarterback coming in the Commanders offense, but he has been one of the best receivers in the league for the past 5 seasons. Just above these guys, you've got Terry McLaurin, DJ Moore, Amari Cooper, Brandon Ayuk, and Cooper Kupp with a 950.5 over-under. Michael Pittman's also at that 950 mark. So these are some good receivers that Pickens has his name associated with. He's even above guys like Travis Kelce, Stephon Diggs, Malik Neighbors, T. Higgins, Chris Godwin, Sam Laporta. So he's in that elite level. Vegas predicts that he will be one of these elite receivers this year. That's something I felt confident before even seeing this. You know that he's going to be getting the ball. It will be a run-heavy offense, but Pickens will still find a way to get the ball, get yards, and maybe score a couple touchdowns. As for receiving touchdowns for George Pickens, he's got an over-under of 4.5 touchdowns. It looks like most of the money is going towards the over on that one, which I don't hate too much. You would expect that if the Steelers are to be successful this year, that he would have more than 4.5 touchdowns. So hopefully that happens here. But Pickens is the number one guy because outside of him, it's only Pat Freiermuth who's got a ranking here, 475.5 yards. He's there with Xavier Legette, Adam Thielen, Dalton Schultz, Christian McCaffrey. He's honestly one of the lowest over-unders that is even listed on DraftKings this year. Pat Freiermuth, hopefully he has a breakout year. There are some question marks around him. The thing that makes me optimistic is that Arthur Smith, he's used tight ends in his offense. Now, it might have not been Kyle Pitts. Kyle Pitts got a decent amount of targets, wasn't utilized correctly. Hopefully Pat Freiermuth is. But the targets are there for tight ends. It's just, will it be Pat Freiermuth or will it be a combination of Freiermuth, Darnell Washington, and Connor Hayward? We're going to have to wait and see for that. But Vegas, they've got him, 475, which is okay. Now, relating this to receiving yards, who's going to be throwing the ball to them? Right now, it's Russell Wilson. And I think most people expected that coming into the season. He's the veteran. He's been there before. He's led teams to Super Bowls. Justin Fields on the other end, a lot of upside, but hasn't proven all that like Russ has in his career. But as far as what Vegas thinks about these guys, it's a whole lot of nothing. You've got all types of quarterbacks who have over-unders for their passing yards this year. Russell Wilson and Justin Fields are not one of them. You can go to DraftKings, you can go to FanDuel, you can go to all these different sports books, and you're going to be lucky to find lines on Russell Wilson or Justin Fields. And that concerns me because it makes me think that they don't believe that either of these guys are going to play for an extended time. It makes me concerned that they think Russ is going to get pulled. So I don't know. What does this say about the confidence that Russ will play a full season? What does it say about what Vegas thinks about the quarterback situation? You're going to have to interpret that on your own, but when you see guys like Gardner Minshew having a line when he's barely beating out Aiden O'Connell on the Raiders, that makes me a little scared. Maybe we'll see some more lines pop up throughout the season, but right now, there's not a whole lot of anything. As for divisional rivals, Joe Burrow has an over-under of 4,000 yards. He's right up there with Dak, Jared Goff, C.J. Stroud, Pat Mahomes. He's going to be throwing the ball a lot. They expect him to bounce back this year. Lamar Jackson, 3,250 yards, and Deshaun Watson, 3,200 yards. So they have more hope that Deshaun Watson will play this year than Russell Wilson will play this year. And Deshaun Watson hasn't sniffed the field since about week 10 of last season. He hasn't played in any preseason games. He hasn't had a full practice in training camp, but they're giving him a line and not Russell Wilson and Justin Fields. So what do you guys think about that? Drop a comment down below. What does this mean? What does Vegas think here? Do they think that Russell Wilson will just blow out expectations, that they can't set a number low enough? Or is it because they think that Justin Fields will be pushing for that QB1 role maybe a few weeks in the season? I'm not sure. Now let's talk about the last thing today that I wanted to get into, and that is the running backs, which I think is the biggest question mark on this team. Not for the talent, because there's obviously talent there. You got the first-round running back talent in Najee Harris, and you've seen what Jaylen Warren's been able to do. He looks like he could be a three-down back. It looks like he could be the workhorse for this team. Vegas thinks it's going to be pretty much a split between these guys. Najee Harris and Jaylen Warren not having lines on DraftKings. They do have lines on FanDuel, which we'll talk about here, but DraftKings not giving it to them because they're not sure about this split. They're also not giving lines to running backs like Jahmyr Gibbs, Brian Robinson, Gus Edwards, Javonte Williams, and that's because they're in a running back room with some talent behind them. Javonte Williams, you've got Jaleel McLaughlin. Gus Edwards, you've got J.K. Dobbins, Jahmyr Gibbs, you got David Montgomery. Even James Conner not getting a line on DraftKings because they've got this rookie Trey Benson who's supposed to be pretty good, and there's been injury concerns. But I think for the Steelers, it's not about injuries. It's not about any of that. It's just about we don't know what Arthur Smith's going to do. He had Bijan Robinson last year, who was supposed to be an all-down type of back, a guy who was supposed to be involved heavily in the run game, in the passing game, and he was definitely useful and definitely efficient, but he didn't get the ball as much as most people thought. So what are we thinking this year going into it? I think that most people think that Najee Harris will get maybe 60-70% of the workload, but from what Vegas is saying, I think it could be closer to 50-50. Like I said, DraftKings not giving a line, but FanDuel, 800.5 yards is the over-under for Najee Harris. Pretty solid. He's right up there with Jahmyr Gibbs, who has 825.5. Joe Mixon also 825.5. Rachaad White, same line as Najee, 800.5. These are good running backs up here. They're not top of the top. They're not Derrick Henry or Christian McCaffrey or Breece Hall. They're not that level. But when you're in a committee like this, it's going to be expected that there's going to be a little bit of a dip compared to those guys. Now, Jaylen Warren, on the other hand, 615.5. So 615.5 yards rushing this year, over-under, compared to Najee Harris's 800.5. This is one where I don't think Vegas has it right. I think you could switch these, and it might be even more accurate. You could have Jaylen Warren at 800 yards, and I think that would be closer to what you're going to see as far as receiving. I think maybe Najee Harris has a little bit more of an upside in the passing game. But as far as rushing yards, I think Arthur Smith will use Jaylen Warren to the fullest extent. He will see what this guy can handle. I think Tomlin, I think the organization wants to see if Jaylen Warren can be a number one running back. So they're going to push him at times. They're going to see, do we need Najee Harris again next year? They didn't pick up his fifth-year option, so that's obviously going to be a question mark the whole year. But they're going to test Jaylen Warren to see if he's ready for this, and I think it's going to be super interesting. Now, let's just talk about the games, the total of the season, not just week one. We talk about it every single year. Mike Tomlin's never had a losing season. He's going into year 18. That's pretty much unprecedented in the NFL. The winning seasons definitely is, but just making it this long is a testament to how amazing of a coach Mike Tomlin is. I believe in this team wholeheartedly, but it's going to take some work because just on paper, they're not the best team in the AFC North. They do not have the best quarterback in the AFC North, but they do have the best coach in the AFC North, and they do have a better team than they did last year. I think people are quick to forget that the Steelers were very close to being a number one seed in the AFC last year. They had a really, really rough stretch where they lost to the Arizona Cardinals, the New England Patriots. They had really bad losses late in the season where it costed them. But the Steelers are a better team this year. You look at the additions, you look at the departures, and I think the Steelers are up. Losing Deontay Johnson might hurt, but everything else is better. The defense is better. The quarterback situation is better. I think another year under the belt for Najee and Jaylen Warren helps them. The offensive line should be better. So, with that being said, the team's record should be better. I think the Steelers are going to do just fine this year. I think they're going to make the playoffs, but obviously only time will tell. All right, guys, that's going to wrap it up for Turf Watch Week 1. I appreciate you guys all for tuning in. We'll be back for Week 2, recapping this week's game against the Falcons and previewing the next matchup. So tune in all year. Make sure you're here on the Arthur Modes YouTube channel. Like, subscribe, and keep watching these Turf Watch videos. I'm Dom Farrow, and go Steelers.